wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Welcome to the Sunday Stoic Podcast. My name is Steve, and this is a podcast about the application of the ancient philosophy of Stoicism to modern life. Why in the heck would you want to apply ancient philosophy to modern life? Well, they were onto something. They had a kind of comprehensive worldview, not all of which has stood the test of time, but their views on human nature and human flourishing are quite compelling and have Many of these ideas have since been backed up by modern science and psychology. And it's really well written, and it's fun to delve into as well. So this week we are going to talk a little bit about the basic tenets of Stoicism as put forth by Epictetus, but we also want to talk a little bit about some practical applications and realistic applications. You know, it's easy for us to make false starts. Epictetus warns us about confusing learning for progression. In another reading we've done in the past, he warns us that just because we've read all the books on Stoicism doesn't mean we've made an inch of progress. We're trying to climb a mountain of virtue, a mountain where no known human has made it to the top, but we're trying to end up higher up that mountain than where we started. But if we're just reading about mountain climbing at the base, we're not getting anywhere. We need to actually take action and climb. We need to show that we've put this stuff into practice. Seneca, on the other hand, also talks about people always starting, always beginning. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to have this routine. No, I'm going to have this routine. Then a few weeks later, well, that didn't work. I'm going to try this routine. And we're always making new beginnings, or finding a different philosophy, or finding some new project or passion without sticking to something and becoming, an expert at it. We're making false starts. We need to have a pretty decent path. We might modify that path a bit, but we need to stick to a path. So we need to watch ourselves in that sense. So today we're going to hear from Epictetus, and he is going to tell us things we must keep in mind when we're engaging in difficult circumstances. So we're going to have a pretend conversation with God. The Discourses of Epictetus. Book 1, Chapter 30. What we ought to have ready in difficult circumstances. When you are going in to any great personage, remember that another also from above sees what is going on, and that you ought to please him rather than the other. He then who sees you from above asks you, "In the schools, what used you to say about exile and bonds and death and disgrace?" "I used to say that they are things indifferent, neither good nor bad." "What then do you say of them now? Are they changed at all?" "No." "Are you changed then?" "No." "Tell me then, what things are indifferent?" "The things which are independent of the will." "Tell me also, what follows from this?" "The things which are independent of the will are nothing to me." "Tell me also about the good. What was your opinion?" "A will such as we ought to have, and also such a use of appearances." "And the end purpose, what is it?" "To follow thee." "Do you say this now also?" "I say the same now also." "Then go into the great personage boldly, and remember these things, and you will see what a youth is, who has studied these things when he is among men who have not studied them. I indeed imagine that you will have such thoughts as these. Why do we make so great and many preparations for nothing? Is this the thing which men name power? Is this the antechamber? This the men of the bedchamber? This the armed guards? Is it for this that I listen to so many discourses? All this is nothing, but I have been preparing myself for something great. The Discourses of Epictetus, Book 1, Chapter 15, What Philosophy Promises. When a man was consulting him on how he should persuade his brother to cease being angry with him, Epictetus replied, Philosophy does not propose to secure for a man of any external thing. If it did, philosophy would be allowing something which is not within its province. For as the carpenter's material is wood, and that of the statuary is copper, so the matter of the art of living is each man's life. What then is my brother's? That again belongs to his own art, but with respect to yours, it is one of the external things, like a piece of land, like health, like reputation. But philosophy promises none of these. In every circumstance I will maintain, she says, the governing part conformable to nature. Whose governing part? His in whom I am, she says. But then how shall my brother cease to be angry with me? Bring him to me, and I will tell him, but I have nothing to say to you about his anger. When the man who is consulting him said, I seek to know this, how, even if my brother is not reconciled to me, shall I maintain myself in a state conformable to nature? Nothing great, said Epictetus, is produced suddenly, since not even the grape or fig is. If you say to me now that you want a fig, I will answer to you that it requires time. Let it flower first, then put forth fruit, and then ripen. Is then the fruit of a fig tree not perfected suddenly and in 1 hour? And would you possess the fruit of a man's mind in so short a time and so easily? Do not expect it, even if I tell you. The first reading was a good review of some of the main ideas of Epictetus. So there's an individual, I guess it's us, going to meet someone of some great personage. Perhaps it's a king who has the power of life and death over us, someone who has great riches. They could offer us unbelievable wealth or instant death, depending on their pleasure. And Epictetus says, okay, you've been training for this. In school, we were able to say, well, exile is not an evil, and death is not an evil, and riches are not a good. You know, all of these sorts of things that are real easy to say on a podcast or at school. But this is, here we are actually walking into the king's chamber, and God, the universe, as it were, who laid down these rules, is saying, okay, tough guy, are you able to put your money where your mouth is? Do you really think that death isn't indifferent? Because it might be coming any second now. And if we have really prepared and internalized this, we can say, I'm not afraid of death. And I'm not afraid of exile. And where is the good? Well, the good is in my own judgments and things like that. And then God says, well, go ahead and walk in there then. And if you truly have internalized this stuff, you're going to look around and say, what the heck is all this? These things that other people fawn over, riches, wealth, power, and things that people are scared of will be nothing to you. And you will say, what did I spend all the time preparing for? This is nothing. I was preparing for something great. So we will be unaffected by the things that others live their whole lives for. So we need to make good use of our impressions. That's another topic that comes up there. Remember that though we are practicing Stoics, we still have all the same inputs into our eyes and ears as everyone else. And those inputs, so whatever's on the news, or if a king points at you and says, I might sentence you to death, those are all inputs. And then we are going to make an interpretation of those with our brain, right? And that initial interpretation is kind of natural, that impression. So the king might say, I might put you to death. You're instantly going to have a bit of release of adrenaline, and you're going to go, oh, crap. But then to really make use of that impression, you look at it and you say, okay, you are a fear of death. And I know that death is not something to be feared. It comes to all of us sooner or later. And it's not an evil. It's completely natural. And I've been preparing for it. I've lived a good life in case I go today. I'm not afraid. And then you make proper use of that impression. So we have to make good use of impressions. We have to remember what is valuable and what is not. And this will set you apart from those who are scrambling after the scraps of meat that the king throws to the dogs, as it were. In the other reading, someone's talking to Epictetus about their brother. And I'm sure a lot of instances like this come up around the holidays where you have a brother who's mad at you. Well, philosophy offers you nothing to make him stop being mad at you. Now, it will tell you how to be a good person. If it's your fault, to make amends, to be kind to your brother. But you cannot get in there and control your brother. You can expose your brother to philosophy, but whether or not he takes it internally and changes his mind towards you, that is entirely his prerogative and is not up to you. So the only things up to you are those things in your own head and how you make use of the world, how you interpret the world, how you respond to the world. And philosophy offers you nothing external. It promises nothing external. That doesn't mean external things won't come to you, but they will come, they will go, they will wax, they will wane. The tide ebbs and flows. And our sanity, our calm cannot be dependent on the flow of the tide, on the changing of other men's minds. So I wanted to also talk to you briefly about expectations and applications of Stoicism, and just give you some examples in my own life and reveal my own horrible frailties and hypocrisy. I spend too much time reading online. I spend way too much time online just killing time or reading blogs or posts by even other Stoics, although they're useful. Doesn't mean I always apply them, right? I'm just looking at what others have done and unfortunately comparing them to myself rather than always taking something useful out of it. Even when it comes to Epictetus, I actually literally had an event Epictetus describes happen, and I kind of got upset by it. I got over it, but I was affected briefly. A broken glass, which I knew would break. We had a wine glass that was used in our wedding for our wedding toast. And my son bumped the table and broke the glass the other day. And I was like, a little peeved by it for a second. But it was a glass, and glasses break. And I wish I could instantaneously be stoic about it, but it takes me a moment to interfere with the normal programming of the human mind. Also, I think it's easy when reading the reviews of others, or reading the thoughts of others and the practices of others. Once again, we don't want to compare ourselves or to others or compete with others for our Stoic practices. We might be interested by example and follow their example or shy away from their example, but we shouldn't say, well, I have to do what they're doing. For example, you might read about morning routines. I have wanted to have a morning routine for a long time because mornings always suck for me. And part of the reason they suck for me is I don't always go to bed at the same time, or I have insomnia the night before, and then the morning's really hard. Mornings have always been really hard for me. I always feel like crap in the morning. And it seems like when I exercise, like I try jogging, that usually gives me more insomnia than when I don't exercise. So I've never been able to figure out a great morning routine. Oh, sorry. I'm distracted by a bird. There are birds flitting around outside my window. Anyway, I'd like to have a morning routine. You know, you hear about people who get up at like 4:30 and then they read Stoicism and then they write this about it. Then they take a cold shower and then they eat their morning gruel because they're suffering hardship and they're not going to have something tasty for breakfast. Then they go for a 800-mile run and then they're ready to write their book that day and do this. And it's like, okay, that's silly. That's like special forces level Stoicism here. And for the most part, singleton Stoicism. I am a married man. I'm a dad. What would a real morning routine for a normal person look like? Because this is just the Sunday Stoic is a normal person Stoicism podcast. That's my view. We are engaging in the world, and we're not extreme outliers in terms of our social status or lifestyles. Now, some of you, of course, will fall off of that bell curve, but that's neither here nor there. My morning routine, ideally, if I want to be realistic, because Stoicism is about realism as well, right? Would probably be, I probably need to set an alarm and get up every day at the same time. So let's just say 6 a.m. That's probably as early as I'm ever going to be able to handle, unless my body tells me otherwise. Arise at 6, get up, shower perhaps, and get dressed. Help with breakfast, maybe oatmeal or something simple. I need to stop watching TV. I often turn the news on and kind of just sit there and stare at it. I should have breakfast at the dinner table because by 6:30 my 3-year-old is up. And so he's often whiny. Got to get him dressed, get him down at the table, have a pot of coffee going. And then by about 7:15, we're on the road going to work. I think that's my morning routine. Now, if I could enhance that slightly, perhaps right after rising, maybe after shower, before breakfast, I could read a few pages of Stoicism and jot something down in a journal. But that's going to be about the extreme end of that. But if I could do that darn near every day, that would be an improvement. So I'm going to aim for that without trying to stack more on top of the routine and berate myself for not doing more in the morning. If you have any morning routine tips or advice, shoot me an email, sundaystoic@gmail.com, or if you want to share them with the world, shoot me an audio file, sundaystoic@gmail.com. Tell me about your morning routine. What works for you? Perhaps it'll work for us. I just know that I myself need to pay more attention to what Epictetus says when he says, don't make failure a pattern. Don't become used to failure. You will fail, yes. But don't make it so you pretty much know when you start you're going to fail and then that's okay because you're used to it. We want to succeed. Don't get used to failure. So I want to set a pattern and stick with it. I'm turning 40 in February, and I really want to feel like I've made some progress here. And I've had lots of false starts, journaling and morning routine, and some of these Stoic concepts that I should implement more regularly. But to be honest, life has been fairly chaotic with a little kid in the house and a full workload at work and all that stuff. It's you have to be very deliberate and have the understanding of your spouse. And also have to understand that you can't form a true routine when you have the chaos of a Tasmanian devil in the form of a 3-year-old child in your house that will interrupt any routine you set. I don't have a big enough house where I can go hide away upstairs or something. I don't have an upstairs. I don't have a basement. I do have a shed out back, which is currently below freezing outside, so that wouldn't be very much fun. So I have to make do with what I have. So I think that's something to keep in mind. We keep the best routines we can, but we have to keep them stoically. We have to work on stoicism while applying stoicism, and that's something that's sometimes hard to come to terms with. But anyway, I'm going to work on a morning routine and also work on surviving the holidays. I hope you all do the same. Remember to shoot me an email, sundaystoic@gmail.com. If you want to share anything with the show, shoot me an audio file and I'll put it in the podcast. Always looking for someone to contribute some content, so it's not just my voice shouting into the darkness. You all have a great week. Seize the day. Carpe diem.
Thank you for listening to The Sunday Stoic. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review The Sunday Stoic on iTunes. Become a member of the Sunday Stoic team, earn rewards, and be an integral part of the show by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/SundayStoic. Contact the show by emailing sundaystoic@gmail.com or by leaving a voicemail at 501-503-3132. To find out more, visit www.sundaystoicpodcast.com.